Smell those eggs and bacon. It's time for Breakfast Talk, a podcast covering a range of entrepreneurial and independent comics creation topics first thing in the morning. Of course, please like and share if you're enjoying our special seasoning. And be sure to subscribe to join us every Monday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central. Let's talk.
Yeah, I bundled up all my good ideas in my cheeks right there. That's what
It's good. Now you go like Al Capone.
Like a chipmunk collecting nuts.
I have a favor.
I got so many nuts in my mouth.
Hey, boo-boo.
Hey, boo boo.
Hey, the picnic basket.
Stick a little basket.
We're really bad at Yogi Bear impressions. Just gotta say that.
So, welcome to Breakfast Talk. This is episode 12.
Breakfast Talk.
Breakfast Talk.
Episode 12. The Reckoning.
Oh, shit. This episode, the topic is who should do your cover art for your comic. I sounded like a robot.
Who?
Who? By coffee.
Who? You a fucking owl?
That was so violent. Oh God.
Who the fuck is Venice?
Who's Venice?
It's from Wolf on Wall Street.
Oh.
Wolf of Wall Street.
I'm reading that right now.
Well.
Yeah, but
I saw the movie. I don't remember every line like that.
I do.
I remember that it was hilarious.
Yeah.
I do remember that.
Get the loads. Okay.
So today's episode is about who should do your cover art for your comic books.
Right. And apparently I'm the anchor point of this conversation.
Obviously, you're the artist. I'm just a writer. Nobody cares about me.
This is an opinion-based thing, so it's not necessarily like my
No,
opinion
no,
is
we
like
brought Hector
superior.
No. You are the deciding factor here.
All right, so I'm gonna be the like tiebreaker. So you guys should go first then.
No, not tiebreaker. We brought you on as the sole and only person who
Oh
knows
God.
In a presidential debate, me and Dylan are going to talk over each other, and you're going to be the moderator.
We're going to talk over each other very loudly.
The best way possible.
Better than the best way.
Think of something really, really good.
It's
Okay,
gonna be
better than
really
that.
good.
Better than that.
It's gonna be better than that.
I think it's an interesting thing to think about from both sides, because as the artist, like, that does sequential work for the majority of the stuff that I do professionally. I think
sequential work for writers who don't know enough about artists.
Sequential work is the actual comic book itself. So the panels on the inside, you could call it panel work, you could call it artwork, illustration, whatever you want to call it. Sequential just means one after another. So that's kind of how that translates. But yeah, as a sequential artist, I definitely would like to do the covers of the books that I work on, but I understand that sometimes it does take it's a different skill set, and I'm not necessarily the best at that skill set. So if you have a truncated work schedule where it's like I'm working on the sequential art, and you say, well, I'm going to get another artist to work on the cover while you're working on the sequential art, that just makes more sense as a project. So in terms of that, I think that's a superior way of going about it. But when it comes to like work that you're doing, like, so if I was doing a comic book, like I'm producing the comic book, I would do the cover. And that's just because I feel like the cover helps define the inside. So in my perspective, I would want the cover to match the sequentials and not have it be something that's like a really, really extremely dope cover, and then you go to the inside, it's got a little lackluster. But I think that there's an expectation of that already. Like typically the cover art is something that is already seen, maybe it's just in the industry, but it's seen as something that is supposed to be eye-catching, and the sequential work is supposed to be a little more in-depth. It's supposed to be something that's not necessarily focused on the artwork itself. It's focused on
The story.
Yeah, exactly. And the culmination of the two things. How well do you tell the story with the images, and how does the imagery deepen the storytelling, and vice versa? So
Yeah.
Well, the thing I was thinking of is like, the don't judge a book by its cover. It's like we all judge a book by its cover. That's a
Yes.
lesson for deep philosophical thinking, but everyone judges a book by its cover. Like it doesn't matter what field or industry you're in. And so when it comes to comics, like you do want a kick-ass cover, but you also need to realize you're setting expectations for the comic book. And so, yeah, if you hire, a Marvel artist to draw your cover, and then you have your 10-year-old nephew draw the comic, it might be a little frustrating for the person who buys that comic
Correct.
if that's
Yes.
how they're introduced to it. So it's like
Yeah.
it's not so much necessarily that the artist needs to do the cover, but if they don't, it should at least give the look and feel of the comic. It shouldn't be over the top. It shouldn't be underrated either. It shouldn't be less than the artwork inside. It should definitely be on par or better than to draw attention. It is the main marketing.
I think also too, it's not necessarily even if the artwork is better. I think it really just has to have very strong design elements that catch the eye. So it doesn't necessarily even have to be like technically better. And if it wasn't like, so if it wasn't a different artist, maybe I just picked a specific style that I wanted to do all of these covers in. So it just follows this kind of like design scheme every single time. And that is eye catching. So it doesn't necessarily need to be like a better artist. It just needs to be somebody who has a grasp of like, again, something that's an eye catching image and can really, execute that in a timely manner. Because again, when you're doing a comic, everything has to have its time and place. And when you're making a cover, because like you said, people do judge books based on their cover. And that's something that, as a comic artist or the comic industry leans into. They understand that is what's going to happen. So they lean into it. And that's where you get these really extravagant covers for these books. But yeah, if you take it too far to the extreme where, you're saving like $1,000 to pay your cover artist, but you're only paying your sequentialer, $20-$40 a page. There's two things that are not going to line up. You have to have kind of like a range of skill sets that you're going to be establishing that match each other. And yeah, the company I work for in New Zealand, Maui Empire, they have a good way of doing that. Like they really do. They hire cover artists. Fu Man, he's an amazing artist, but he knows how to take the character designs and the sequentials that I've already created and then draw like the stylistic integrity from it and still use his skill set to, create the cover of the artwork. So there's some artists that I wouldn't say he's dialing it down to fit my style, but he understands what my style is. So he can kind of like create something that's dynamic, but still within the range of, like you said, not setting these ridiculous expectations. Like there's gunships in the background and like all these kinds of crazy things that don't show up in the story.
So the way I'd like to think about it in that context would probably be like in like an anime show, like those moments that look really intense compared to the rest of the drawing. It's like that's like the cover art of those intense moments. So it's just like a little more exaggerated, a little, because it's marketing. It's supposed to be the thing that gets you.
Yeah.
Greg want to show.
And Hector drew this for us for our original first issue, and the art. He's not like the artist of the comic, but still awesome. But the second issue, we actually had the artist that we now have do the cover. So.
But what you want to think about too is like when we're talking about this specific concept, what we're also talking about is the collecting aspect of it, right? So like the cover is always the first thing that you see. So like you hung those books on the wall, right? So like if I had a display case, I want the best artwork from all these from all these comics to be on display. And that's part of it too. And that's why I think whether I guess it just depends on what you're buying the comic book for. Are you really buying it for the storyline and like how much you love this or this piece of work? Something about it on the inside really just captures your attention, and you're not necessarily focused on the difference between the cover and the inside? Or are you somebody who is a collector and wants to display those things? Because if you're going to display them, then that cover is going to be really important. Yeah, is that this guy's book?
This is Impact Theory, but that's Steve Aoki.
Steve
and, like,
Aoki. There you go.
so clearly, even though he's not the like protagonist of this, they're using him as the cover for marketing. He's in it. The scene isn't necessarily in it, but something like it. And yeah, it's very in-depth detail. Like I don't think you ever see this much detail in his face as you do throughout the rest of the comic.
Yeah.
But it's like a little bit of extra lighting, a little bit of extra shadow, a little bit of extra detail. It's enough to get your attention because you think about it, it's like trailers for a movie. They show like some of the most epic parts of it, even though that might be a micro fraction of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it makes sense. It makes sense to do it that way or to think that way. I think, yeah, it's just creating that balance between the interiors and the exteriors, and knowing who your comic, like who your marketplace is, because there's some people that like legitimately they love cover artwork and they're not as concerned about the inside work. Like they're really not, like, as long as they get to read the panels, everything is clear and makes sense. They're not necessarily as in love with the interiors as they are with the
So
exterior.
they're going to show off the cover art and they want a good
Exactly.
story. Yeah,
Exactly.
As long as the story's good and the cover art, yeah.
That one piece of imagery holds their affection enough that that's right there. You
You
know,
ever see those stick figure YouTube videos where like it shows stick figures fighting and they break out of like the paint that they're drawn in?
Mhm.
I just picture that throughout a whole comic book and then like that neon future cover.
Exactly.
It's a great story. What else do you want?
Yeah. And you know, when it comes to the differences between like a sequential artist and a cover artist, I think the main difference is that a sequential artist has multiple panels to tell a story. A cover artist can tell a story in that one page. It's really good at that snapshot kind of storytelling. So that's super important. I think when you're the creator, when you're the writer, that's probably the mentality you want to have. You want to have somebody who can have a quick snapshot storytelling of your comic book and still make it really eye-catching and design oriented and things like that. And then when you're hiring your sequential artist, make sure that they can tell a good story in your sequentials, that everything is clear, that the backgrounds are very, you know, like you have the foreground to background contrast so that there's a lot of good dynamics to the storytelling and characters and things like that. So that's probably the mindset I would say for a creator, for a writer, for people that aren't in the industry, like as artists, that's probably what you should, or how you should think about creating your books.
Yeah, I was actually thinking too because it's the cover art's kind of like a splash page, but it has to do more than a single splash page does.
Yeah.
So even if your artist is like great at splash pages, it doesn't mean that they're great at making, you know, cover art that's meant like even simple stuff like leaving room for the title. You know what I mean? Like knowing that you're gonna have to have a title and like the little tag on the side, like being able to fill it up without filling it up.
Yeah, it's like I would say splash panels or pages or people that are good at splashes. That's kind of like a middle ground. It's like, you know, you're half in, half out. And like you said, I think it's just really based on the skill set of the artist. You know, again, if you can see that their artwork as a cover artist really, you're able to draw a lot of information from that cover. It keeps you really engaged and entertained. That's probably a good sign. And then with the sequential artists, if you're seeing that their pages are just very clean and understand and very readable, and they're able to understand how to move from one panel to the next and create the cover, the interesting cover page turns, those kinds of things, that would be like, this is the guy for me too. That's probably the two main factors that I would look at when creating or hiring artists, I guess.
Greg's
Yeah.
like, I agree.
No.
Yeah, and Hector actually did the cover and the art for our current Kickstarter that's actually going on, Chronicles of Horror.
Oh, nice. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah.
Nice.
Did the cover, and then I did a 6-page story for the interiors, but we do have 3 other artists that have their work in that book as well. And yeah, it's just coming together really, really well. We were funded in 1 day on Kickstarter, which was really amazing. I think it was our ability to set a reasonable goal that kind of helped with that a lot. But yeah, we're still pushing. We're still trying to make, as much as we can so we can fund the next book, which we already we had to we had a conversation, right? Me, you, and Matt, and we're talking about like the next book, and I'm like, dude, we got to like finish this one first. Like this one needs to get done first. So yeah, we're already generating a lot of interest in the next one. So
Greg, I know we haven't finished even getting issue number 2 drawn, but want to work on script for the third one?
I actually wrote wrote an idea that Hector came up with the other day,
creative genius,
and that might be in the second issue or something.
It's pretty hilarious.
It is hilarious,
and honestly, it's like it works so well as like a short to the point kind of comic.
Yeah,
just throw everyone off. So I'm totally fine with it.
Yeah, so sweet. We actually have we have Breakfast Talk merch.
We have merchandise
coming. So you'll be able to get a mug with our logo on it, and probably other stuff if we can figure out designs for whatever we're gonna do.
Breakfast Talk.